My speech today is about American culture versus our American deaf culture versus American hearing culture. Did you know that there's a small population within our population here in America that have their own culture? I'm speaking about American deaf culture within our American hearing culture. Today, I will explain how deaf culture here in America is very similar and yet very different from a hearing culture. I will explain how deaf culture is considered high context compared to hearing culture, which is considered a low context. I will show how the concept of kinetics is the basis of American Sign Language. Also, how the hearing culture will speak. Also, how the hearing culture has applied ethnocentrism to deaf culture to make deaf people talk. First, I will speak about how deaf culture is considered high context compared to hearing culture, which is actually considered a low context. American deaf culture is actually considered a high context culture per megaessay.com, accessed on 4/18/20, states most deaf communities are like a family in that they are very inclusive, have very tight bonds. It is hard for outsiders to understand what is going on and to fit in. Communication is mostly done face to face. Within the hearing culture, you can move anywhere within the United States and be able to communicate with any other person with other people very easily. And this defines it as a low context culture. You also do not need to be face to face to communicate with the hearing culture. Also, majority of hearing people do not have friendships that last from elementary school to adulthood because they move, physically change schools, or see any other situation, any other number of reasons. Within the deaf culture, friendships are made usually at the elementary school level, and they're usually formed at a deaf school. And this friendship is kept throughout their entire adulthood. And because of the community is so small. Now that I have shown you how the American deaf culture is considered high context, I will now explain how American hearing culture has used ethnocentrism to force the deaf culture or the deaf community into learning how to speak. Not all deaf people speak. If they do, it is over many years of training, and most do not speak clearly. Majority of the hearing culture thinks that if the deaf just speak, they would get along better within their culture. In actuality, it is the hearing culture applying ethnocentrism that started pushing the deaf to speak. From my experience from being a deaf child until age of 4, when I had my first ear surgery, my mother signed to me, and my father demanded that I speak. I was in speech and lip reading therapy. I can remember how much work it was, and getting angry at myself because I could not get the basic sounds correct. My father would get frustrated because he could not understand what I was trying to say. Now that I have explained how the American hearing culture has used ethnocentrism to push the deaf into speaking. I will now discuss how the language of the deaf community, American Sign Language, is actually considered Kensic. Since American Sign Language is such an important component of deaf culture, it is also considered a Kensic type of nonverbal communication. American Sign Language uses all forms of Kensic: gesture, body movement, facial expressions, and eye contact. Whereas spoken English, the hearing culture only uses a few of these items at a time, or a few of these at a time. Here, I'll end up giving you an example. Yesterday, my dog walked to the store. Now, in sign language, in American Sign Language, you would say past, walk, yesterday, dog, store. Just as English is important to the hearing culture, per Debbie Klassen of healthyhearing.com on December 24th, 2019 stated, the National Association of the Deaf Culture, American Sign Language uses facial expressions to really get the point across, whereas spoken English uses milder forms of nonverbal skills to make their point. In conclusion, American deaf culture is a small culture within the American hearing culture. Even this small culture has a high context, also has survived the hearing culture pressuring or using ethnocentrism to get them to speak, and the deaf culture also uses Kensic to make up their language. This culture is rich with traditions, and more people should learn more about it.